Hey y'all, Luigi here with another video. So I had a chance to sit down and chat with Silly Name, who is the rank 5 of my alliance and the strongest person on our server, as well as one of the strongest in our general battle group. And spoke for quite a long time about a bunch of topics, and really he was able to provide me with a ton of insight into the game, and things that he's learned at his level. So what I wanted to do was thank him for sharing all of that with me, and then I want to in turn share it with all of you. So there was a lot of stuff that we discussed, and ultimately I'm probably going to break it down into three or so videos. Gonna One of the videos will be on PvP, like arena, desert storm, world stuff, winter storm, and whatnot. And then another video will be on squad composition. And then this video, I'm going to be talking about squad power versus actual combat results, and how to read squad power, and what that really means. And then also going to talk about gearing. So let's get right into it. As some of you have probably noticed, right, you may have been beaten by someone with less squad power than you, or you may have beaten someone with higher squad power than you. And thinking about that number in and of itself, like intuitively you might think, oh well, if I have higher squad power, like I should win, right? And yeah, there's things like, oh, maybe you lost because the person you facing is countering your squad. But in reality, there's actually a lot more that goes into it, and a lot more that I didn't realize goes into it. So let me go ahead and pull up a battle report, and I've briefly went over this in a previous video, but when you look at this info button, right, you can see there's this power details, and you can see there's squad power, which is, for in my case, 19.7, and then there's this additional power for this battle only, and you can see it's 5 million. And this is what I want to kind of really drill down into. There's this concept of your sort of your flat, your flat statistics, slash static, statistics, and then there's the conditional statistics. And what I mean by that is, conditional is ultimately going to depend upon the battle itself, who you're facing, what are the circumstances. So it's all situational, and that's where the additional power is calculated, right? Because that can't get calculated until it knows who you're facing and what those conditions are. And you can see it's quite a big number, right? 5 million additional power. So in reality, for this particular fight, my squad's power is really 24.7 million, not the static 19.7. And that's like the thing I wanted to sort of point out, and we'll drill down to it in a second. But right, like this is my squad's power that you can just see when it's sitting here, 19.7, and that is what, the same number that you saw in the battle report. But there's a lot more that goes into the actual combat results. And that's something that you should really think about. The squad number, the squad power number, just tells a small part of the story. And really, you want to pay attention to the battle at hand. So let's go into some of these numbers a bit, just so I can, explain where some of this stuff comes from. So the actual static, number that doesn't change, that squad power number, right? You can see it consists of your hero power, your unit power, your drone skill power, and your skill chip power. Now, the hero power calculation is really very simple, right? If you were to go to each of your heroes, and I'll pull up my heroes here. If you go here, that number at the top here, this 4,000,000, 396,568. If you just add all those numbers for the heroes in your squad, that is your squad's power, right? It's just adding all those numbers together, right? So that number, as you may or may not know, that includes the gear your hero has equipped, as well as your skill power, right? So that's really all that is. That's just adding all those numbers up. And then the unit power, right? So the unit power is actually going to be the same, right? So you see it's 5.1 million here. So if you go to the army tab and you scroll down to your units, right? That's that exact number. So that's the power of your units, and that includes like the tier of your units and some of the technology boosts that you might have, like to increases their static or flat number. Then you have the drone skill power. Now, your drone itself has a skill, right? And it attacks. And I believe that that's that number, but I'm going to be honest. I was kind of looking through the drone skill power or the drone information, and I couldn't find anything that really equated to 1 million for myself. So if anybody knows how that number is calculated, definitely put it in the comments. But anyway, that's the the drone skill power component of it, and then lastly, it's the skill chip power. And the skill chip power, that was easy to find. If you go to your drone, and you look at your skill chips and whatever squad that you have up in your battle report, if you click on each of these skill chips, right, there's this power number associated with it, 74,500, and if you add all four of these up, that will be the same number that you see in your battle report. So that's where the static numbers come into play. And getting into the next part of it, which is the additional power. And the additional power, that is, again, depends on the situation of the battle. And if you click on it, it gives you some examples like PvP bonuses, things like that, rally bonuses, all sorts. And some of the examples they give don't necessarily apply. Like this is clearly a 3v3 battle that I had. And you'll notice this 5 million is really the addition of these two numbers below that you see there. So there's a line for tech boost and there's a line for lineup bonuses. So the tech boost, that kind of makes sense if you really think about it. So if I go to my tech tree, right, you'll notice like there's certain things. I mean, I don't have some of this stuff trained, but right, if I click on this ability, Fierce Assault, right, in PvP battles, as the attacker, the hero attack increases, right? So if I click on PvP battles, this includes things like arenas, right, battlefields, all sorts of stuff, right? So if I'm the person attacking, I'm going to get this bonus for that particular battle, right? And the same thing here for the defense. This is the defense side, right? Increases attack on defense. And then there's other things, right? Like there's reduced damage taken by heroes during battle, right? So that gets calculated, during, like, based on the battle itself. So that's conditional. There's also the morale, which I've talked about in a previous video, right? And the morale, depending upon the morale of your troops, that increases the damage that your troops do. So that's another thing that is going to depend upon the battle, because that depends upon your opponent's morale and the difference between the two. So that was something that I thought was very interesting in terms of these, this additional power. And I guess like in the back of my mind I kind of knew it, but I didn't really fully understand it until I spoke with Silly. The other thing so I don't have this, but if you go to your the army section and you go to your tech power and you open this up, This has like the differences, like where you are stronger or weaker or the same as your opponent. And again, you can click on these and you can see who's the attacker, who's the defender, and where the bonuses come into play. Um, and there is like, once you reach 80% for special forces, you unlock mastery technology. In mastery technology, there's one for each type of hero, right? So there's missile, aircraft, as well as tank. And those mastery researches do not get included in your squad power number. That is part of the additional power number. So that's one other thing I wanted to mention with regards to tech and additional power. Now, the last part I want to talk about in terms of this is the lineup bonus. And this is one of the things that kind of confused me a little bit, right? Because the lineup bonuses, which I had talked about in a previous video, right? That is your synergies, right? So you can see on this bottom here, right? On the right side, I'm running 5 tank heroes. So because I'm running 5 tank heroes, I get I boost hero attack and defense and everything by 20%. And my opponent has 5 aircraft heroes. And so they have the same situation on their end. Now, when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, that's something that is known before the battle, right? Why is this part of additional power? Because the game knows that before the battle even starts, that I have 5 tank squads or five tank heroes, so I should get the 20% boost. Why is that not part of the squad power details? And ultimately, the reason is because of the way that this extra 20% is added and calculated into the battle. And from what I understand, the way that the game sort of calculates power is it starts off with your hero's base unadjusted power with the gear. Then it gets into troops and the bonuses with troops and the tech. And then there's drone chip considerations, right? So, like as you know, when your drone chips fire, there's you can get different bonuses there. And then finally, after all that stuff is calculated, then you get into these synergies and bonuses. So this 20% is calculated after all of those things are calculated. And as I was just describing, some of those attack bonuses depend upon the actual battle that you're doing, whether or not you're attacking, whether or not you're defending, and things like that. So that is why the lineup bonus is part of additional power. So that's really definitely something to keep in mind when it comes to thinking about what your actual power is when you're going into a battle. So hopefully that helps all of you understand how that all comes together, and hopefully a better understanding of how things are working behind the scenes. In terms of So that's all I want to say about squad power versus like actual squad power. Um, and now let's talk a little bit more about gear and things like that. So actually, even before I get into gear, I want to talk briefly about the Wall of Honor, which, as you know, contributes to your power. And for those that don't know, once you 5-star a hero, you unlock their Wall of Honor. So basically, when you click on them, you can spend 10 shards of that hero or the generic ones, and every 10 that you spend increases this level. Like you can see, Kimberly right now for me is 24. And you can see every time I update or promote this, it increases all heroes' HP by in this case 16,000. And then once I get Kim to 50, I get these, I start getting these additional bonuses for that hero type, right? So 50, 100, 150, 200. And one of the things that Celia told me is that this is really one of the most cost effective bonuses in the game. And the reason is because these promotions, these upgrades impact all of those hero types, right? This is not just helping Kim out, this is helping all of my tank heroes. So ultimately the strategy you want to do with these is you can focus on one hero initially with this, and you can get them up to 200, right? So you can see every 50 you get a bonus. Once you get to 200, the cost increases. It goes from 10 shards per promotion to 20. So that's really what you want to do. You want to get to 200, then move on to the next hero and whatnot. So this is, of course, like for me, I don't have all of my ultra rare heroes at 5-star, so I'm not using my universal shards to increase my wall of honor. I won't start doing that until all of my ultra rare heroes are 5-star. So that's again something to consider, and get ready for those who are already there or on their way there. So that's all I wanted to mention with the squad of or not the squad, the wall of honor. So I want to talk about some insights on gear composition, and I talked about this in a previous video as well, but I have some updated information and some more insight based on my conversation with Silly. So generally speaking, the rule that you should take is you want to have radar and armor on your front row heroes, right? So this would be, in this, if I'm looking at, actually, I guess I'll look at my air squad. So in this case, Lucy and Carly, right? I want them to have radars and armors. Then I want to have railguns and chips on my back row heroes, right? So in this case, it's Shyler, Morrison, and Diva. Now, there is something I want to say here is that if you are like a free-to-play player or a low spender, chips are not that important. And let's kind of look at that. Like why are chips not that important? So if I were to pull up this chip, you can see here that once you get it to level 10 or promote it to level 10, you get 250 hero attack. 20 is 2% damage reduction, and then another 250 and another 2%. Now, first off, 250 hero attack, that is a low number. It is not a big number, so it's not like super impactful. And the other thing is the resistance, right? So the 2% damage resistance, it's actually worse than you think, because the way that the game works is when you're in a battle and say you're taking 100 physical damage from some source. The way that the game works is first it's going to calculate resistance to all damage types. So in this case, like just assume I only have 2%. So if I'm taking 100 physical damage, then my chip will reduce that damage by 2. So I'll take 98 instead. And then after that calculation is done, it goes and looks at that actual damage type resistance. So for, I can keep looking here, and you can see that I have a level 30 guard, and at level 20, I get this extra 10% physical damage. So that 10%, so now I'm at 98 damage taken because I've reduced it by 2. And now I'm going to take 10% reduction from that 98. So this 10% reduction now only reduces damage by 9.8 instead of 10. So it's not a bad thing, right? It's just not as good as you might have think because it's not like something that's just additive. Um, so yeah, so basically the chips are ultimately the bonuses just aren't that great. So it's okay if you don't want to prioritize the chips. And then finally, the thing that you want to do is get all radars on your back line as well. So if you think about what I just said, so if you have radars on all of your squad's members, and you have uh, radar, or excuse me, if you have, and railgun and chip on your back row, and then um, you have armor on your front row. That is essentially 26 pieces of gear. And that is the main thing that you should think about. You don't want to think about gearing a specific hero. Like, yeah, you're going to have your Kim or your Diva, and they're going to be your strongest heroes in terms of damage. But when you think about gearing, you want to think about your squad as a whole. You don't want to think about an individual hero. And so in generally, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you'll end up having three strong squads, but gearing takes a lot of time and a lot of investment. So it's going to be a long time before you have gear on all three of your squads. So by going by this approach and trying to get gear, like 26 pieces of gear would be considered like a fully geared squad because you have the most important elements in place. That's how you want to think about it. So you want to, and you can do that for two squads initially, and then go from there. And again, so that 26 is 5 radars, 3 chips, 3 railguns, and 2 armors for your squad. So the other thing I want to talk about with gear is leveling them up. So we talked about the chip not being that great and whatnot. And ultimately, when you're leveling up your gear from 0 to 40, one of the things you want to think about is you never want to here's something that I did that was wrong, right? So the game recommends, like, there's this option here that you can choose to recommend, that the game will give you suggestions on what you should upgrade, and I turn this off. And the reason is because the game recommends, like, oh, you should get your something to 10, and then you should get another one to 10, and then another one to 20, and then so forth and so on, right? And when you look at all of the bonuses of these things at level 10 and level 30, right? We talked about 250 attack. Once I get to level 10 and to level 30, that's not really a great, that's not a big number. That's not super helpful. Same thing with hero HP, right? 10, 30, it's a decent bonus, but it's not really that great. And again, same thing with the railguns. The radars, I'd say, is like a little bit more of an exception. Like the hero defense is actually a good number for the 10 and the 30 here. But ultimately, the biggest gains are going to be to getting these to level 20 or level 40. And so that's what you want to focus on. You either want to get something all the way to 40, or you can decide, hey, I want to get everything to level 20, and then I want to get everything to level 40. Either of those strategies is fine, but definitely avoid getting everything to 10, then getting everything to 20, then get everything to 30. You wanna skip the level 10s and the level 30s, because those bonuses just aren't as good. Okay, so that is the upgrade path for, and you can do the same upgrade path as I described earlier. Now, let's talk about upgrading beyond 40 and mythics. So The insight I received is that mythics are very useful in super high end combat. So if you're, one of the whales or someone who's like very strong, mythics are very useful. However, when you think about mythics, right? So I have two pieces of gear that are actually ready to become mythics. I just need the actual mythic blueprints. And to get to this point, right, to where I'm ready to upgrade to mythic, it costs 50 legendary blueprints to get one mythic. And that's a lot. That's a lot. And much like I discussed before about getting pieces to level 20 or 40, the upgrade paths, the star levels on these items are pretty much the same, right? So, if I'm looking at this railgun, you can see once I get to 2 stars, I get a 5% increased crit rate. And that, like right here. So that is a very big increase, right? That's a really nice increase. So that's kind of like what you want to think about. I could either spend 50 legendary blueprints for one mythic piece of gear, or I could get 2 pieces or 3 pieces from 0 to 2 star for the same amount of blueprints. So that's something that I wish, obviously I didn't do that here. But after speaking to Silly, that is definitely what I'm going to be doing is getting and focusing on getting pieces to 2 star as opposed to getting things to mythic, especially since mythic blueprints are very, very hard to get and to come by. So that really sums it up. Again, you want to focus on gearing your squad versus gearing your hero. So yeah, so hopefully that helps all of you and gives you some insight into some of the more nuanced components of the game. Again, I'll be coming out with a couple more videos based on my conversation with Silly. But yeah, if you have any questions or any other input, definitely put it in the comments. Thanks for listening.